Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, but I would say that this brewery are known mainly for their New England hazy IPAs and also for their big fruity juicy sours, the Berliner Weisses, the Goses and things like this. But I always keep an eye out for the beers that these guys are releasing, and I would say that generally speaking, this is one of the Swedish breweries that you should keep an eye on over the next little while. So looking forward to this one. Hopefully it's another interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to return to a little place called Strömstad, a lovely little fishing town on the Swedish west coast, to the north of Gothenburg, Göteborg, and quite close to the Norwegian border as well, in fact. And that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from Fermenterarna, or the Fermenters, as you might call them in English. But this particular beer is called Beyond the Bills. It comes in at 8% ABV. It's a New England hazy, imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the Lokal och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget for June of 2021. I think they released 3 beers this month. I think there was another IPA and a sour beer, and that's pretty standard for Fermenterarna actually. They tend to release maybe 2 or 3 beers every month, usually at least 1 sour and 1 IPA. But this month I just wanted to get one, because I've got a load of other things to review as well, but I do enjoy getting at least 1 beer from these guys every month, and this one just caught my eye because of the artwork and the name, and sometimes that's what you have to base your decision upon when it comes to choosing beers. That's what it comes down to for me sometimes. But yeah, looking forward to this one, as I said. So let's crack on with the review then. Always nice to review something new from Fermenterarna. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fermenterarna before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Fermenterarna. So Fermenterarna, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Strömstad up on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded by Niklas Aronsson and Anna Claesson back in 2018. So apparently their journey to getting involved in beers are quite different actually. The journeys of these two guys are quite different. So apparently Niklas ordered a beer in a bar one day without really knowing what it was, and it turned out that this beer was the Tropic Thunder from Dugges Brewery, which is one of the kind of cult classic sours that you'll find here in Sweden, a collaboration with Stillwater Artisanal over in the States as well. But yeah, this really kind of woke Niklas up to what beer could be, rather than just being the kind of fizzy yellow lager stuff. But on the other hand, Anna has had a long interest in things that ferment, and she also runs the restaurant Kostas Trädgårdar and has fermented various things over the years: sourdough bread, sauerkraut, you name it, she has apparently tried to ferment it. So pretty cool actually. But these guys really quite interesting journeys on their way to becoming craft beer brewers. So great stuff. But the brewery started out with a small 200-litre brew kit and tanks, and then in late 2018 they took a break to expand the company after their beers were very well received by different friends and different festivals and things like this. But these days they boast a new facility with 2 500-litre brew kits, and they've got a total tank capacity of 17,000 litres, and they were aiming to brew 50,000 litres over the course of 2019, which they did. I think over the course of 2020 they actually brewed around 100,000 litres of beer, and they are planning to expand up to capacity over the next few years. They do have capacity to brew around 250,000 litres of beer per year, as far as I'm led to understand. But according to Untappd, these guys have produced around 115 different kinds of beer as of June 2021, and like I said earlier, if you're into your New England hazy IPAs or your big fruity juicy sours, then Fermenterarna are one of the breweries that I would highly recommend that you check out. They've got these lovely, very soft and very smooth New England IPAs. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about them for the moment. If you would like to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. At some point as well, I would love to have these guys for a Meet the Brewery segment, so I'll need to see about organising that at some point. I need to get up to the Gothenburg area again and interview a number of the breweries up there, and if I go up there I will be making the journey up to Strömstad as well to visit these guys if they'll have me. But yeah, we'll see about that. There is the imminent return of the Meet the Brewery segment to the channel coming up quite soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But yeah, Fermenterarna, lovely brewery, and as I say, check out all those links in the description below if you want to learn a little bit more about them. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a look at the beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is quite, you know, it's the kind of standard style for what we'd expect of Fermenterarna. They've got a lovely artist actually, but they don't say on the cans who it is. So I do wonder if it is actually Niklas or Anna that do the artwork themselves for these beers. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. But there you can see the Fermenterarna brewery symbol on this one, which is pretty cool actually. Just the fermentation vessel. The thing that I really love about this is that you've even got the little groove in the airlock on this one. I always think that's a really cool part of this beer. But yeah, or part of their symbol I should say. But yeah, 440 milliliter can this one. I believe I paid 50 Swedish kronor for this, so that translates to roughly €5, about £4.50 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $6 American, just so that those of you watching in different parts of the world have a bit of a price reference. But yeah, gold top on the can, as we usually get from Fermenterarna, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, as I mentioned earlier, and apparently this one is hopped with Mosaic and Sabro, so we should be expecting quite a big orangey hit out of this one. Both of those hops of course come in around 14% alpha acid. They're both American. Sabro is going to give you a bit of a coconutty kind of pina colada sort of thing with a bit of orange on top of it, whereas Mosaic is a lighter kind of juicier tangerine sort of thing. Can sometimes give you a wee bit of pineapple too. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Looking forward to this. I always look forward to my Fermenterarna review every month. Fermenterarna and Duck Pond, these guys both doing some solid New England IPAs and fruity juicy sours. So two of the breweries to keep an eye on here in Sweden over the next little while. But yeah, the head's disappearing on this one quite quickly. So before it does, you can see that this beer poured with just about a quarter finger of quite a bumpy white head, I would say, but that's fading away very, very quickly to leave pretty much nothing on the surface. There's just a little bit of a bubbly ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, kind of interesting this one. Wonder why the head disappeared so quickly. I can't remember whether the other beers have retained their heads a little bit better than that, come to think of it. But as long as the beer tastes good, it's not too big of a deal. But yeah, as you can see, this beer is poured a lovely, quite pale yellow colour actually. I think on the camera the colour looks a little bit richer than it actually does to the naked eye. So yeah, this one to me comes across as quite a pale yellow, but I can see on the camera that it comes across as quite rich and bright. But yeah, I would compare this one to a sort of pineapple juice. Actually, I would compare the colour of this one to pineapple juice. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. But remember, when it comes to the colour of these beers, it depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of your colour, of course. 2, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. A New England IPA like this one is going to undergo a wort boil of about 70 to 90 minutes, something like that. And adjuncts and barrel aging, of course, will help determine the colour too. But in a beer like this one, those two factors are not at play. But the level of haze on this one is quite nice. I think this might actually be a little bit soupier and gloopier than some of the other ones we've had from Fermenterarna before, but it's not a million miles away from what the level of haze that we've had from them before. The level of haze in these beers is determined by the wheat and the oat content and yeast to a certain degree as well, and so you know it varies from brewery to brewery and recipe to recipe. It's all about what your oat and wheat ratios and things are. But yeah, it certainly looks very nice, this one. So nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. One of the lighter looking, the lighter coloured ones that I remember having had from Fermenterarna, and it looks a little bit more kind of soupy and gloopy, of course, as well. You can see if I stick my fingers behind the glass there, this one actually has a very good degree of haze to it, but when it's an 8% New England double, you would expect it to be a little bit more hazy, to be honest with you, but that doesn't always have to be the case, as we've said. But yeah, looks the part of a New England double. Let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Nothing surprising about the appearance of this beer when we consider what style it is, but yeah. This smells really nice, actually. This is right up my street, I'm going to say that. So yeah, this one has that kind of trademark, it has that kind of trademark Fermenterarna sort of softness and smoothness to it, if you like. As I've said in previous reviews, there's a few different directions you can take New England IPAs in. So in my opinion, you can have a more kind of farmhousey and yeasty one. They can be a little bit more kind of rye leaning and grainy. They can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be a little bit more kind of brown sugary. Quite often, of course, these beers will display multiple characteristics. Fermenterarna, they seem to have a nice kind of barley malt crispness to them. You get a bit of oaty smoothness, and depending on the recipe, you will get a little bit of wheaty bitiness out of them as well. But for me, Fermenterarna's IPAs tend to be quite smooth and quite crisp in a sense, you know, barley malt leaning and just a little bit of smoothness from the oats. And a lovely smooth wheat quite often as well. So yeah, you get that out of this beer right away. This one's got a lovely, lovely aroma to it. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, straight away you get that kind of big white bready character out of this one. You can smell the crispness of that fresh white bread in there. There's a wee bit of bread crust as well, but not overly much. You can smell some nice sort of smooth wheaty character in there, and at the back of the nose the wheat gives you a little bit of bite as well, and you can get a little bit of creaminess out of the oats. And I think the more that you smell this beer, the more you start to get a little bit of sweetness from the oaty part of the beer. So I really like that about this one for sure. I think that works out very, very nicely in this beer. The more that you smell of it, you do start to get a little touch of a kind of Werther's Original note to it as well. So you can get a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original kind of butter candy, butterscotchy type thing coming out of this one, which I really like. So yeah, that goes together really nicely in that. As I say, this Fermenterarna beers, they've always just got this very fresh white bready quality to them, and you know, you always get a bit of lovely oaty sweetness and a bit of wheaty bitiness out of them, and this beer is displaying that very, very nicely. But this is what we've come to expect from this brewery over the last couple of years. But yeah, just a little touch of a kind of Werther's Original sweetness mixing in with that too. So yeah, looks great. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things then, I would say this beer has a little touch of earthiness. It has got a little bit of that in there, but you've got a nice big green floral component to this one. It's interesting, both of these hops of course are quite high alpha acid, you know, 14 and I think maybe 15% for Sabro. I think Sabro is just a little touch stronger. But yeah, the thing that this beer really shows you've got a lovely bright floral note to it, and you've got a lot of lighter grassy qualities in there, and this beer really highlights how dependent the New England IPA is on late addition hops. So remember, when it comes to adding the hops into the beers, if you add them on early during the wort boil, that's when you're going to get most bitterness out of them. This is what they tend to do with West Coast IPAs, and as you go through the wort boil, you've got a trade-off from bitterness in favour of flavour and aroma. And the New England IPAs, of course, tend to lean overwhelmingly to late addition hops and dry hopping as well. And you can smell that right away in this beer. But the green component for me, it does intensify a little bit. The more that you smell the beer, you start to get a really bigger floral aromatic component out of this one. It's got a lovely depth to it. There's a teeny little bit of spiciness in there, but I wouldn't say overly much, and the spiciness is something that you'll also notice from a lot of hops if you use them as early addition hops rather than late addition hops. But lovely big bright green character to this one. Some lovely bright zesty grassy kind of qualities coming out of the beer as well, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, the green component of this one is really nice, and it builds a good bridge with the malty backbone of the beer. But yeah, on the On the fruity side of things with this one then, there's a nice, it is orangey leaning, it's orangey all the way, but you've got a bit of depth to the orange too. For me it leans towards the kind of lighter side of things. You've got a light juicy kind of tangerine in there, maybe a wee bit of a sharper mandarin as well, and underneath that you can get a little bit of the kind of coconutty thing that you'd expect from you do get a little bit of the kind of coconutty thing that you'd expect from Sabro in this beer as well. So it comes across very, very nicely actually. I really like how this one goes together. But yeah, the aroma of this beer overall, can't speak in this video, the aroma of this beer overall I think comes across really nicely, and it's right up my street. It's got that classic Fermenterarna sort of softness and smoothness to it that I'd expect, lovely bright green component, and then it's got just some nice juicy oranges. So I have to say I'm quite excited about this one. I always tend to enjoy these beers from Fermenterarna, but I think this one is going to tick the boxes, so we'll need to see. But let me just line the can up again so that my OCD is happy, and now we can crack into this beer. So yeah, take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beer. As I always say, that's half the experience when it comes to craft beer and whiskies and sakes and things, but let's go for it. So this one is Beyond the Bills, 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Fermenterarna in Strömstad. Sabro and Mosaic in this. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah. Once again, that's an awesome beer from Fermenterarna. These guys really know what they're doing with these beers. Now I'm going to say it does have that typical Fermenterarna kind of softness and smoothness to it, but it almost just feels a little bit thicker as well than some of the other ones we've had in the past. And it could just be that I've not had one of their beers for a while, but as I say, I did suspect from the appearance of this one, this did come across as being a little bit soupier and gloopier than some of the other ones. So this one might have a little bit more oat or wheat in it, or something like that, maybe a bit of both. But yeah, it does come across. The first impression I have of this one is that this is a wee bit thicker than some of the other ones that I've had from Fermenterarna. I'm trying to remember, I think the last IPA I had was a double, actually. But it kind of goes to show you they like playing around with the malt bases and things like this. I'd love to see like an old school West Coast IPA from these guys. You know, a kind of high bitterness one, 80 IBUs. You know, I think that could be a really interesting thing from these guys, because they've got a pretty damn solid New England base here. Absolutely. But yeah, this is another awesome beer from Fermenterarna, so if you get the chance to try this one, go for it. You will enjoy this. A little bit thicker, as I say, and a little bit more kind of soupy and gloopy, I think, than the ones we've had previously, but it works. So, where do we start with this one then? On the malty side of things then, what you'll find is that it starts off a little bit thicker and things like that, but as you go further into the aftertaste, it's a little bit more, it is a little bit more kind of, it gives you those kind of lighter and more crisp white bready things that you would come to expect at this brewery if you've had a few of their beers. So let's just break this down for you a little bit more and describe the flavour a little bit more kind of succinctly, if you like. But yeah, straight away with this beer you can feel that nice kind of soft bready quality that just blankets the middle of your tongue. And that's, yeah, that is the backbone of the beer. You will feel a little touch of graininess come out of it the further you go into the aftertaste, but a soft and crisp white bready character. If you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you will get a few kind of bread crusty elements in there, which is great. Sitting on top of that soft layer, there's a nice kind of smooth white bready wheaty element coming out of it, so you can taste that there, and it gets a wee bit bitier when you go into the back third of your palate, but we'll come back to that a little bit later on. But yeah, sitting on top of the kind of the sort of wheaty layer, if you like, you've got the smooth oatiness in there, and it's sort of like the oats kind of go right down the kind of middle line of your tongue, and they're quite thick there, but they sort of thin out a little bit as you push further out from that dead centre of your palate. They sort of kind of spread themselves. They sort of just kind of it sort of sweetens up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, and you can feel that it just sort of fades away a little bit. Pardon me, as you move out towards the side of your tongue, but I really like how that goes together in this beer. The malt bases, I should say, that you get from Fermenterarna are always just really, really nicely executed. So thumbs up to them again for pulling off another solid beer here. But yeah, it's very, very nice. So in the sitting on top of that that kind of nice oaty layer, in the very middle of your palate, you get almost like an oval. You do get this kind of oval sort of thing there, and then you get a nice you get a little bit of that kind of Werther's original sort of butter candy, butterscotchy type thing there, and it's quite minimal, I would say, but you can feel it's a little bit concentrated in the dead centre of your palate, and those are the alcohol flavours coming out of this beer, of course. I think there will be I'd love to know what these guys do with their malt bases, because I think they're New England IPAs. These guys are killing it with these styles at the moment. I'd love to know what it is they put in their malt bases to balance them so well, but I really like the way that these guys do the malty side of the beer, and I think that's a little bit undervalued. Everyone thinks about the hops these days when it comes to IPAs and stuff like this, and of course that's a big part of it, but I think having a solid malt base to back it up is also very, very important. But yeah, this one's got everything you'd expect of the IPAs that you'd find from this brewery, and I think it's got a little bit more thickness to it. I think there's a wee bit more oaty character to this one, and you can feel that it kind of sweetening up a little bit more and giving you a more oaty sweetness the further you go into the aftertaste. But I like that with this one. But yeah, on the back third of your palate, then border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you do get a little bit of bready build up. Once again, there's a wee bit more of a kind of grainy bread crusty sort of thing, and then into the back third of your palate. You've got you can feel the wheatiness, I think, become a little bit more prominent. So you can still feel a bit of the crisp white bready character, but then the sort of pungency of the wheat builds up, and you get a really nice big bitey wheat on the back third of your palate. But sitting on top of that, of course, you get the more yeasty elements, so you can feel that nice airy yeasty quality just sitting on top of that more wheaty base on the back third of your tongue. So if you start at the very back of your palate, you can feel that the height of the flavour is just a little bit more. So as you come further forward, it condenses down gradually, but then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it squashes down quite a bit, and you've got really nice, you've got more kind of nice condensed flavours in the middle of the palate there. So I think that works out really quite well, actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard as well. Malty side of this beer is very, very nice. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, so back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there. I would think that would be coming from the Mosaic rather than the Sabro, right enough, but it's actually got a little bit of brightness to it, the earthiness. But as you move further forward, it quite quickly starts to lean more towards that big floral aromatic side of things. So you can feel it's got quite a nice depth to it as well. So quite a deep floral aromatic note to this one, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it does get a little bit more kind of it does develop a little touch of a spicy character, which I think is very, very nice. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, you can feel the beer is a little bit lighter and grassy, and there's also a nice little bit of zestiness in there as well. So the green component, I would say, in this one has got that brightness that it's sort of the brightness that you pick up in the aroma really translates into the flavour in this beer for me, and I think that's great with this one. So yeah, thumbs up to them again on that count. Lovely big bright green component to this one. But let's focus on the fruity side of the beer then. So front third of your palate, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Once again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. You can feel a wee bit more of that kind of grainy bread crust, and then the base of the front third of your palate, it comes across as being the soft kind of crisp white bread and a wee touch of the wheatiness that's forming the backbone of the of that fruity part of the beer. And on top of that, of course, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on those. But yeah, this one you're going to notice straight away. This is all about the orange. And it's quite interesting this, because usually in these beers you'll have the tropical fruits on the back half of the front third of your palate and the more citrusy fruits on the front half. But this one, it's all about the orange, and the different kinds of orange in this one. So you can feel, I think this beer, you can feel on the front half of the palate, you've got that nice more oily tangerine note from the Mosaic, and you've got a nice kind of lighter note from the Sabro kind of sitting on top of that. The beer almost gives you the impression of just a little touch of a sort of pineapple-y note, and you can also notice a little bit of coconut in there as well, which is the Sabro. So both of these hops are showing themselves off really nicely. So I like that, and they kind of combine to give you a really nice mixture of different orangey flavours. Like I say, a more oily tangerine note. I think the Mosaic tends to be a little bit more oily than the Sabro does, but of course the most oily orange hop I think would be Amarillo, and it's got even more zestiness than these guys do. But yeah, nice oily orangey character. On the front half of the palate, that's the more Mosaic note, and then I think the Sabro notes kind of sit on top of that, but you can also feel the kind of coconutty depth of the Sabro in there as well. But yeah, as you move towards the kind of very front tip of the tongue, it's definitely a little bit more kind of zesty and things, and I really like that. It's quite zesty and orangey just behind the kind of front tip of your tongue where you're getting all the grassy notes. But this one's a lovely beer actually, and I think it goes together really nicely in that side of things. It really ticks all the boxes for me. Sorry, computer is going a little bit mental there and complaining about things, so yeah, we can get rid of that. But yeah, to round off the review then with the mouthfeel, so overall I would say that this beer is it's pushing towards the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation, I would say, is very, very smooth. Overall, like I say, I find this beer a little bit kind of more, I do find this beer a little bit more kind of thicker and creamy in a sense than some of the other ones we've had from Fermenterarna in the past. But I think that really works for it in this case. It also has a little bit more, you're going to notice as well with it, it gets a little bit bitier the further that you go into the aftertaste. But definitely, yeah, top end to mid-body, this one, smooth carbonation, quite big and creamy in a sense. But yeah, just a really nicely executed New England IPA for me. In terms of the IBU count and things in this one, I think we're talking about 40 IBUs in this beer, potentially a little bit more, but I think 40 is reasonable. Usually when you've got a New England double like this, you want just a little touch more bitterness out of it, and this beer gives you that. It does develop a little bit of a kind of spiciness the further you go into the aftertaste. On the malty side of things, it's got the crispness, the sort of white bready crispness that you would expect of Fermenterarna. You get that big kind of lovely oaty creaminess in there as well, and a wee bit of a kind of butter candy type note. So there's a wee bit of sweetness in the malt base too, which I really like. Has a bit more depth to the beer, and then the fruity side of things is nice and big and orangey, and you've got that little bit of coconut in there as well. But this one really ticks all the boxes for me. Sabro, I'm still kind of getting used to Sabro a little bit, but I think it shows itself off really nicely in this one. But Mosaic, of course, is a hop that I am very, very familiar with, and I think the two of those combined go together very, very well in this beer. So yeah, big thumbs up once again to Fermenterarna for this. Another solid New England double IPA, but at this stage I am not surprised from this brewery. These guys do some awesome stuff. So yeah, big thumbs up to Fermenterarna once again for this beer, and I think we can round off the review there. So yeah, this one was the Beyond the Bills, a New England hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Fermenterarna in Strömstad. Who do some really nice IPAs and fruity juicy sours. So yeah, definitely a brewery that you want to check out if you get the chance. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fermenterarna. It's been great to review this one. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point soon, most likely next month in July, but this beer is definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. I would recommend that you check out the beer that they have that is simply called IPA. That was the first New England IPA that they released through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and that one is very nice. But if you can get the other ones, of course, you are in for a bit of a treat with those and their fruity juicy sours. are always pretty damn good as well. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Fermenterarna's social media as well, try some of their beers, and I will see you guys on another review. Slàinte, skål, cheers. The Beyond the Bills 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA from Fermenterarna in Strömstad up on the Swedish west coast. Catch you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.